for what it was that I was trying to convey to your church. I had been thrown down a flight of stairs by a church downtown for some events that had taken place where God had actually created what some would call a miracle or a movement or whatever. There's a lot of words that people put on things that God does, and I'm a nobody. I don't have seminary school or any of that, but you give me a scrap of a verse and I'll tell you 15 different translations of it. I've been in the Word for a very long time, and I used to hitchhike. I've been all across America. I've been in a lot of institutions. I've been in a lot of schools. I've been in a lot of churches. And I've watched the face of America fall a lot from where it used to be. I posted on your Facebook on a thread that was about hypocrisy and the very important necessity that we as Christians not to be hypocrites. And I posted somebody needs to go around and inform some of the local pastors of this message, period. But be careful when you do. Look out when you go home, for there'll be shots fired at your back, something to the effect of. And then there was a bunch of gibberish. What had happened was my cell phone that I was using was Wi-Fi. I had gone through and it froze up on me, and I was trying to get it to react. It was an old model BlackBerry, and so it kept adding what I was pressing, but it wasn't showing up on the screen. It ended up sending the message when I clicked it, but it didn't change the screen, and I just unplugged the battery and loaded it back up. And I'm sure you're probably aware of it, that the old BlackBerries took quite a while to boot back up. So by the time I had gotten back onto the internet, the message had been received and had been deleted, and I had been banned from the website. But I didn't think anything of it because I thought that the message hadn't been sent. I didn't, I carry a very scary reputation in this town. I have always walked with a great deal of fear that is undue. I've never harmed anybody in my life, and I would never attempt to unless you were trying to threaten somebody, an innocent. I am the first to get into some people's faces about sin, but I never condemn a person. That scares some people. We live a very comfortable Christian life in many places. I choose to love offensively. There's a story of God that the enemy in this town, or the minions of the devil, or however you want to say demons, have been trying to keep down for about 5 years now. And it makes people uncomfortable. It makes people very uncomfortable because it shows the face of what's happened to the bride of Christ in America today, and it's not very pretty. I didn't know this is what my life was going to display when things started getting weird when I was a child. I was always excited when something cool would happen, where God would reveal himself, and I would even jump and dance and spin around and giggle like a little girl, like not knowing what was going on, but things just fit, And as time went on, dreams and visions became a very important staple, and we've heard the verses 1,000 times, in the last days there'll be dreams and visions, right? But people missed a very, very important part about what that verse was in context. We quote it from Acts, but it was the prophet Joel that was speaking. And Joel was speaking to the Israelites. And so when Joel said, your sons and your daughters, he was speaking about a bloodline. So this wave of dreams and visions that came forward in America, and I'm sure the rest of the world as well, first hit a certain sort of people. Nobody knew. I ended up hitchhiking 14,000 miles all across America trying to find other people who had the same sort of weird dreams that would come true. Like we didn't have any direction or leadership, so most of us kind of grew up outside of the church, not by choice. I have brushed elbows with people who are in power, and not necessarily because I've wanted to. In my effort to seek a proper outlet, I went to any venue I could just to find somebody who would listen. And I left this recording a couple years ago in case I just ended up disappearing one day. Okay, so that's how that works. The context of what I'm playing for you right now is me grabbing this MP3 player and jamming it into the earpiece of my cell phone, so the recording's not that great, alright? What the man on the other line has told me has startled me enough to pick up my MP3 player and jam it into the earpiece. I stalled him for a second and then I asked him to please explain what it is he just told me. And he was talking about the potential of me being classified. So if you do hear from somebody, it'll be like 6 months to a year. It won't come through me, it'll come directly to you. I talk in the background, but and he says the thing about the base here in West Tennessee is most of the research here is unclassified. This is a friend that I had made inside of the Navy intelligence, who I had sparked enough awe or enough amazement or whatever that he had actually passed me off to his superiors and was giving me the warning that the things that I was demonstrating for this man had the chance of making me become a classified person. Now, when I found out what classified meant, it's just a lovely word for a very prim and proper kidnapping. I know exactly how evil our government is and many of its so I dreaded my hair out and stopped bathing for a while and made myself as unwanted and detestable as possible. I have lived off of the grid underground for almost 4 years now. I'm not a terrorist. I am a Christian. I am a Christ believer. I was baptized Lutheran, but I've been baptized many things by many people, you know. And the words are meaningless to me at this point in time. You know, there's one love, there's one God. A couple years ago, at the start of what sent the Gateway Church into a complete panic, what I was trying to ask you guys for help about, the reason why I was posting what I was posting on your Facebook, I was hoping to get somebody to come investigate what had taken place at a smaller church here in town. At this point in time, I'm about to leave Des Moines to go deal with that man again and several other contacts that I've made across the nation, in Fort Worth, Texas, and in LA as well. And I may not make it back, I do not know. I had what is considered a very taboo in the Midwest, but not in the rest of America, in ministry, group of prophets that I've collected and combed, people who God speaks to, people who do things that are not normal. The same things you read in that book, sir. Before I go any farther, I'd like to show you a picture of a radar photo, a radar series, and like I said, I'm recording. All I would like you to tell me, and I don't know you from Joe or from Sue, is what could I possibly be trying to show with this? It has no words at all. It's just radar imagery. As it loads up here. No, that's not it. I just there we go. Having seen that, I will ask you if this video seems at all surprising that I would also have on my computer. This was taken mostly with a hidden camera. Pay very close attention to this man's face.
This guy, for about 20 minutes after the interview, they were passing around. And the clouds kept passing us by, right? But it keeps opening up right there. And I told you, when I sat down, that I prayed for an opening right there. I didn't want it to be muddy. That's how cool God is, dude. That's how cool God is. Yeah, see over there, we got 4 or 5 on that side. All that way. Pretty much clear skies a little more lady heading over here. And there's the go. All the way out down there, it's so cloudy.
Those are 2 separate instances.
That's the kind of stuff that woman right there will be capable of in a few years.
So you take the first recording that I played for you of what the scientists in the Navy had to say about me, and you put it with the 2 recordings I just showed you, and you can easily understand why a church has thrown down 5 concrete stairs. If I say the wrong thing, suddenly I'm a false prophet, an agent of the devil, whatever suspicion rises up in the hearts of even the most pure Christian for whatever reason. And it's a funny and sad thing that in America today, that as we can agree that the Christian church has fallen from where it should be, we find it very easy to condemn every prophet as false. For some reason, there are no real prophets. We expect them to be perfect. We expect them to be Jesus. Jesus was the only perfect man. And many of us are flawed, and many of us are wounded, and many of us are weak because we were separated from the bride when we were young. And maybe you've read that most of us were raised out in the wilderness because the churches would not accept us. that doesn't stop the fact that whatever message God wanted our lives to be was going to take place, was going to happen. No matter where we were, God was going to be faithful. God was going to carry through His message, even if we were broken in the course of it. I have opened up a chink in the armor of the legal system here in Des Moines, Iowa, that if the right Christians take a hold of what has been done to me, a very large amount of resources can be taken back that has been stolen from the people of this town, of this city, even though we willfully give it over to the people that are supposedly the rulers of men here. There have been a tremendous series of misunderstandings and errors that have cascaded down an entirely huge slope. Okay, and it kind of started with what I sent you guys on the Facebook, but it actually started a little bit before that. And it's nobody's fault. I'm not here to cast blame at anybody. Okay, I know that what has happened, God has done for a reason. There is a prophecy over Des Moines that we would become a city of refuge in times of trouble that are ahead. People have sent many missionary teams into the area to try and facilitate that from across the country, but they did not understand the spiritual host of wickedness that occupies Des Moines, Iowa, and they have all been removed. Most of them pushed out to the north side of Ankeny. And I don't know if this makes any sense to you, but they get pushed to the extreme edge of our metropolitan area because the center of darkness does that. It pushes it to the edge. And it's also why this church sits on the edge over here, and you guys basically have to send missions into the areas, and you guys have your own little strongholds that are, holding up the fort. And I don't mean to sound egotistical if this comes off in a negative way, but I'm very impressed at how this ministry is spiritually blind, as it is not in knowledge, not in wisdom, but in the ability to see the spirits that are functioning on the people to bring them down. Most people don't have the spatial recognition as they're walking amongst them. It's very impressive to see a ministry like this not really equipped with that sort of seer type vision. Vision is what it is. Do the things that you guys have done in Des Moines, Iowa. And that was one of the reasons why I approached your church first, to seek help with what was taking place at the Gateway Church. There's not exactly anybody around this area who has that kind of sight or vision, or whatever you want to call that. A prophet does not start out a prophet. They start out what is called a seer. They see things. They only really become a prophet when their words become true. And I've got documentation, videos, date back as early as 18. People that have vouched for me from as early as 12 years old that I've been predicting the future in this town. They don't know why. They just assume that I know things, and I try to explain to them that God just shows me stuff. I don't get to pick what I see. I don't get to choose what I get to look forward into, Then they don't like me because I can't give them lottery numbers, I can't. I can only tell you what God shows me, and I can't goad God and it's showing me anything. That's not how the relationship of the servant and the king works. It is known abroad, and has been for some time, that there has been a man in Des Moines, Iowa, who has a weather fetish of sorts. It scares the poo out of a lot of people across the nation. It's hit the internet and been on the internet for several years now, but Des Moines has been largely unaware, except for one church who can be down a flight of stairs for it, and a handful of people that were around me when this started taking place on a regular basis, who the church had convinced to remain extraordinarily quiet about it. It was never investigated. I was never looked at twice. I was instantly condemned out the gate because of a prostitute and a drug addict convinced a pastor in one meeting that I was trying to manipulate her with sexual whatever, using spiritual power to manipulate her. I had pulled a headache out of her head. That's all I did. And I can't I hate explaining this. Sometimes God does stop headaches that are caused by a lack of water, but most people who suffer sudden headaches actually don't have a lack of water inside of their heads. It is often some sort of foul spirit or demon or familiar spirit, or never a principality. Principalities don't play like that, but like there's a level that try to attack the mind, and sometimes people are aware of that by a headache of sorts. And I reached forward and I pulled it off, and she was amazed that the headache went away. And I'm holding my hand like this and making sure that she has eye contact with me. And I let go, and instantly comes right back, and the headache returns. And so I come back and I pull it forward again. And I didn't say a word to her about what it was, because you don't tell a mother with children that she has a head covered with demons. It's not something that you tell a young mother who is a recovering addict, barely getting by as it is, a babe who doesn't even understand God, let alone the rest of the stuff, And maybe I should have been completely blunt, full Monty honest about what was going on. I have never had success the moment that I start talking about demons to somebody who does not believe. Even when an event like that takes place, okay, that is not... This woman had been pulling methamphetamine needles out of her arm, flicking blood splatters from it onto a pillowcase and folding it up, unfolding it up so that it had this nice design on it, putting it up on the wall next to the other ones, calling it art. The pastor did not know her personal life when she had come to warn him of my supposed sexual advances using spiritual power. Pastor Paul Stewart was terrified of me when I appeared in his church the following Sunday after this. I handed him a letter. Before he even spoke to me, the Holy Spirit told me to grab a copy of a letter that my fiancé at the time had written to the woman to show this pastor. So I give him this letter before he talks to me, before he tells me that, I'm in trouble. And it ended up having 70% of what his sermon was that day already on the letter. It happens. This is where the pastor is supposed to recognize that the person standing before them works for the same team. It doesn't always happen. The superstition comes in. He gets freaked out by it. I've been accused in the past, because this is not the first time this has happened in Des Moines. I've been accused in the past of actually crawling into pastors' houses and stealing their sermon notes. And I don't even know where pastors live. And for a very long time, I didn't have a car. So I never understood why they couldn't just accept the Holy Spirit was working. I ended up suffering 45 days in jail because of the message that I wrote on your guys' Facebook. There was a 1-year no-contact order that was put in place upon me. This was 2 years ago. The very day that the no-contact order was lifted up, I asked my probation officer if I could come back and apologize, and I was instructed that I did not have the right to, which I knew was in violation of my rights. But the probation office had already proven to be extremely evil, flat out evil, about how they were handling my particular case. The 45 days in jail that I was put in for writing what I wrote on your wall, I was never convicted of any crime. I was never convicted of a probation violation. Instead, I was mentally evaluated by a very young doctor, and despite evidence that I had actually smuggled it in with me, despite my scores on a test that is weighted 100% to medicate anyone who has any kind of religious experience. If you answer this test honestly as a Christian, you are going to be medicated. It asks you questions about, do you talk to God? Does he ever respond to you? You answer yes to any of those, you're medicated. Okay? And the medications turn out to be some sort of like brain damage over long periods of time. You know, this is a very systematic deletion the enemy has put into the system. I passed the test. I was not completely honest. I don't lie very often in my life, but I was instructed at that point in time to not put the truth. And there's scripture in Proverbs that says it is wisdom to conceal some matters. So I went ahead and gave them what they wanted to see. They wanted to see a healthy mind, so I showed them what they considered to be a healthy mind, and I was smart enough to be able to figure that out. So I passed their test with flying colors. But when I told them about some of the things that were taking place in my life according to other people, about other people's reports, he had a big problem. Nobody could possibly say these things about you. You couldn't have possibly been thrown out by the stairs by a church. You obviously contacted that church because you're going to shoot their pastor, he says. He explains his unbiased skepticism, which is really funny because if you look at the definition of skepticism, it is a bias by definition. So these doctors that the city employs have an unbiased bias that they use to judge people with. It turned out that I was court-ordered to take a medication without a prescription, without a diagnosis, before I was even put in front of this doctor, who then was the one to give me a diagnosis. The probation office refused to accept any evidence against the evaluation that I was given, even though it stipulates in the evaluation that if any evidence supporting any of my claims were to come to light, he would amend the evaluation. I have the administration of probation, the person that runs it, her name is Vicky, on recording, explaining to me that I cannot bring forth any evidence about what happened at that church or anything about what people say about me because it's religious. So I was not able to bring forth any evidence to sway the truth. But that right there wasn't the end of it. My legal right was that I could have a second evaluation, a second opinion. So I went court-ordered and took a second opinion. Got a clean bill of mental health every single time. They kept sending me back. But because they weren't saying the same things that the Department of Corrections doctor was saying, they covered it up. They took me to med evaluations, and I consistently got a no need for medication from all the doctors on the outside. Clean bill of health, A+ the whole way. But because the court had ordered me to take a medication without a prescription, these weren't allowed. I ended up recording my probation officer and associated parties and catching her posing as my wife to set up appointments and evaluations hours before she would tell me to appear, so that she could just say that I wasn't going to the evaluations, so that she could just violate me and cover the whole mess up to protect the city's air. An air which is worth at this point over $35 million in a lawsuit. This was all fine and good. I liked the fact that I had these guys pegged. I enjoyed the fact that the enemy did not have the ability to encroach upon my life. They couldn't force me to take a medication because I had every truth on the tongue shot at anybody who come at me. That part was fine. was led to turn my Facebook into a very intricately woven trap of sorts. More like a big spike. The next time the legal system hit me, they were going to pay. They were going to pay in legal fees that they couldn't afford. The litigation it would take just to bring my Facebook into court now would bankrupt the system. We're talking over 6,000 posts that all have to be individually marked. I started posting some of the things that the justice system had been doing on my Facebook. I changed my Facebook name from Jason Jackson Schaefer to Soliloquy Innate Mythoclast, which are 3 words that most people do not have a clue what they mean. But it means I'm going to talk to myself and innately dispel or destroy myths or lies. Soliloquy Innate Mythoclast. So I changed my Facebook into a piece of art. A soliloquy is a piece of art. Forcing not just one post to be taken, but the entire piece of art itself, which was every single post on the Facebook. So what started with and this is I hate to sound like the world, this is a sell point for the story of what it is that God's trying to show through me. I am now the proud owner of the world's largest self-replied Facebook status, but nobody wants to promote it because it incriminates everybody in the legal system that has been doing horrible things, and it shows everything that I've just told you to be true about the way that Satan is using the false psychology of the world to prescribe deletion of people's personalities. And I even rubbed it in their faces. I emailed attorneys that worked for the government. I emailed judges. I emailed the cops. I was like, hey, I'm very sorry about what I wrote on my Facebook last night. Is this sturdy enough legal protection to protect me from making fun of you guys? And then link my Facebook account, and goad them. I goaded them, and I was supposed to. Come. I committed some huge crime. All I did was tell the truth. But I posted legal code that reserved all the rights of anything I created as a work of art. Nobody has my permission to reproduce anything that I have written and use against me. All rights reserved without prejudice. Now, the legal fee for breaking that ranges from $25,000 to $250,000 per infraction. And the only way they can break that legally is if they can prove criminal intent by anything that I've written. And since my only intent on the Facebook was to expose the criminals, I have no criminal intent. Okay. So I paralyzed the 5th District. Couldn't do a thing to me. They were worried about how it would slowly ebb out into the city. So what? Truth does that. And then came my grandfather's passing. I was originally written into this will for $250,000 that I was not told. $250,000. Supposed to be a gift. A blessing. Uncle took the man in after he had a brain tumor that they excavated out of his frontal lobe, had a stroke on the other side, and had gone blind. Didn't remember his wife, didn't remember his life, couldn't remember anything, couldn't keep himself clean, and now he's signed a will he can't even cross a T on. That has totally reversed everything that's in the will to this man who, I found out, the reason why I never met my uncle, why I was hidden from him. Nobody told me until the will had been altered. This uncle of mine had actually raped my mother many times growing up in small town Iowa, and was blamed for the reason that she was into witchcraft, and was blamed for the reason that she got fallen down on the heroin and became an exotic dancer and was expelled from the family. And he was never allowed in because it was considered that his actions upon her are what turned her into what she became. course they wouldn't tell me these things. There's no reason to burden a child with such things, you know. I understand why it was hidden and kept secret. Wasn't always a nice guy. As I'm telling you this story right now, you can tell that there's a certain flair inside of me that is willing to lash out at people who perhaps deserve to be told to stop. But I've never hurt anybody. I might have hurt my uncle years ago when I wasn't as mature as I am now. So there was a great deal of wisdom that hid the secret from me. The uncle that I'm speaking of has a sister-in-law who works in the neighboring legal district. She lied to me and my family that is still alive, saying that she was the best friend of my mother. Okay, I'm the youngest one in the family. I don't have a reason to doubt that. You want me to sign this piece of paper to say that I won't contest the will? I get $1,000? Okay. I didn't know about the previous will. I almost got bamboozled right into it. Everybody else did. Turns out she wasn't my mother's best friend. Steve didn't have any intimate relations with people who were my mother's friends. It was a sister-in-law of my uncle, and she never would have been my mother's friend. So, you know, I started getting suspicious, and I asked her for a simple token of her friendship. I hadn't seen my mother since I was 2 years old. What was she like? Do you have a picture of her? You were her best friend. Stop talking completely. Something's wrong here. Now, when I put the whole picture together, I did have a moment of aggression and anger. And the prophets that work for God are often referred to as eagles. If you ever get a chance on YouTube to look up eagle versus a mountain goat, you'll notice that the eagle goes up to the mountain goat, twice the size, pulls it right off the cliff face and drops it. Kills it, takes it back to its home, feeds its kids with it. We don't do well with goats, sir. We protect the sheep. Whether or not pastors realize that's what we're doing, we protect the sheep. This woman was a goat. She's robbing me for $250,000, which would have been just enough to get the legal stuff enacted, to take care of the rest of the problem into one aisle, to make the way for the city of refuge. Because it won't happen until the legal system's been put in its place. Under God. That's what God's demanding. All men. And it's coming upon the legal system bit by bit. Here's the problem. This is why I'm here today. This is why I tell you this story, and I know it's a huge, long thing, and I hope you understand now why I've recorded this. I know it was a little scary at first. I was like, hey, guy, I'm going to record this, you know. I was totally honest. There's no way you'd be able to repeat this to any of your friends here, and, you know, that's okay. I apologize for spooking you. I did warn you that I was going to spook you a little bit, maybe. Okay, this is the whole deal. She lives in the 4th district. Okay, she's shiesty. She knew I was on probation. I told her about my probation being as evil as they were. I showed her some of the evidence of it. I was like, hey, you're my family. Why don't you come help me prosecute or defend me? Never a response. She talked with them and got me thrown in jail for 30 days as a probation violation for being rude to her in these emails. Neglecting to show the probation office what she had been participating in. My emails also contain the same legal disclosure that says you can't reproduce this and use this against me, the same amount of fines. She actually reproduced 44 of those. So if you take 44 times $250,000, you have quite a hefty number of legal damages that are owed by this person. 30 days in jail for writing these emails. I took that right out the gate. I signed away the right to an attorney. I took 30 days for it. Didn't receive a harassment charge, just a probation violation, and now I'm off probation. I knew that this was going to get me off probation quickly. I knew that this was going to have me off sooner. I knew that I was going to face these same charges in the next district. God showed me in that moment that I was going to be put into double jeopardy because she was going to try to put me out of the hearing over this will. I recorded my uncle in the profession of guilt about doing what he did. All I have to do is get down there and show it to a judge. They don't want me anywhere near there. I like to record people. It shows the truth. The moment that I was out of jail, the police from her district, the police from her city, her town, were there to pick me up and take me to the next county to have me charged for the same charge, but not a probation violation, and now for the actual harassment charge. The police talked to me about a statement that I made on my Facebook concerning her. I explained to them what my Facebook was. Take a Facebook in, you take a whole dang thing into. Now the 4th district is aware of the criminal acts taking place in the 5th district, and they are no longer just pushing me around. They now have a neighbor that's really interested in why they are so evil. So 2 municipalities are now looking at each other like, what's going on here? And of course, there's corruption on both sides, and everybody wants to figure out how they can screw everybody else over and end up looking like the saint for being the hero, you know, like there's about to be a fallout in this city because of this event. Over a will. My inheritance. That was the trigger to set the trap. They already attacked me for it. I got out because there's double jeopardy. You cannot be charged twice for the same act. That's why I took the maximum amount of days, if I were charged with a misdemeanor that it was. And I says, I'll take them. I already know. Yeah, just give me that, you know. Even though I had 45 days of credit, time served, having sent you guys a message trying to get you guys to come investigate and help. That time was never given. I should have been in and out. Now that is everything Satan has done. Okay. That's all the layers of the onion that Satan has put on top of what God has done. I haven't even started with what God's done. It's short and sweet. It's actually very beautiful. You have to get through all of that, because what God has done in Des Moines, Iowa is perhaps one of the most beautiful things I've ever heard of in America, and it is the reason why I get to go across this nation and have one of the best portfolios put up by some of the best LA artists in the world. And I'm very glad to be off probation now to be able to go do that. They've been asking me to come out there for 2 years. This is going to sound a little weird, so I have to go back to the visual aids here. Some people think it's a little strange that some of the videos that I use, I don't say a word in. And I'm not a scientist. In fact, I had a judge remind me that I'm not a scientist. But the fact is, I'm actually very analytical. And I do know how to run experiments. And the woman that I told you about initially, her name is Anne Elizabeth Bennett. I began praying for her. And like I told you, I had dreaded out my hair and I made myself into a degenerate, not wanting to be a part of the classification. So what it does with the crazy naps that I have in my hair, I took one of these threads that constantly falls down and I wrapped it up with an orange thread, so that every time it fell down, it reminded me to pray for this woman. I think the ministries call that intercession, intercessory prayer. The police call it an obsession. But because of her methamphetamine use at the time and other things, I felt that God needed some supplication and some petitions to heal this woman's heart. She had children. So I prayed one day, maybe 7 or 8 days into the prayer, I don't remember specifically. Lord, 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 please heal this woman's heart. Lord, 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 please heal this woman's heart. And I get shook on the inside of myself, and I hear very clearly in the spirit, but not with my ears, Jason, get down on your knees and ask me again. I'm in broad daylight, I'm in public, you know. I have that moment of fear. People are gonna, Muslims do it all the time. Oh, on my knees, you know, like, I don't care who sees me. God, please heal this woman's heart. Now, I mentioned being able to see demons. I have documented evidence that I can tell people, complete strangers. I can show complete strangers which ones hear voices and which ones don't. Because I can see the demons that are talking to them. I have a little bit of a gift there. It's not just like I'm getting a lucky guess every time I talk to somebody, you know, you hear voices, oh, lucky guess, again, no, I see the actual communication taking place. I wasn't always that proficient, and this is a very recent thing. It's gotten very pronounced the past couple of months, but it's been growing the past few years. One glimpse into the spirit realm after I said, Lord, 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 please heal this woman's heart and my knees, is a very large soul tie, or soul connection, or cord, or rope, or wire, or whatever you want to call it, leaps out of my heart and just keeps extending like a pipe, and just travels the distance between her and I, like, within a second, but that big around and disappears. Okay. I didn't think anything of it. It was a very brief moment. I had been fasting. I wasn't in the right kind of mind anyway. I was in prayer. I see weird things all the time. Not a big deal, you know. Like, oh, I'm gonna go back to my day now, you know. Like, okay. Ended up surviving 13 days on a very dirty fast. I drank a lot of espresso. I was working, and I had a meal, I think, every 3 or 4 days. So it wasn't exactly the tough fast stuff, but it got me to where I needed to be. And on the 13th day, I began to realize that there was a sensation over my heart that I didn't recognize. And it changed. It wasn't stable. It didn't have consistency. It did have consistency over a period of days. It would always start about the same time in the morning, and it would always end kind of close to the same time, but only on weekdays, when she had to go to sleep to wake up to take her kids to school. So I didn't realize this at first. Now, I am not a man who has a lot of fear. I have more fear at first talking to you because of the ability to, you know, say the wrong thing at the wrong time and totally make you think I'm a freak than I do out in the world, obviously, from what I said on my Facebook. She had a lot of fear. So the sensations that I was feeling from her, I did not recognize at all. I didn't even know the emotion of fear. You know, like, that was not a concept that I had. So I was like, what is this sensation? Now, I ended up having to build a device. Ghost hunters use these. Okay, now, this is actually the best one in Iowa. This is not like the ones that the ghost hunters use. This is a triaxial EMF detector, electromagnetic frequency or electromagnetic field detector. And I'm just showing how it takes a little while for it to warm up, and then I have to actually work with it a little bit to get it to zero. And it doesn't stay there, but as I move it in front of my heart, it starts to spike. And all of a sudden there's a big difference. I pull it out there. It becomes a bit easier to understand as the video goes on. I'm pulling it about 1.5 feet in front of my chest, and it's getting these readings. Okay, I get it to zero out again, which standing in the middle of the cord was tough to that point. And then I take it right up to my chest. Oh yeah, I show how my hand affects it. It measures the spirit energy inside of your hand. It measures all spirit energy, which is why the ghost hunters use these things. But I'm not out chasing ghosts. I'm using it to show clearly that it draws the proximity of the radiant energy. Now, it takes a while because I go through all this to show the avid skeptic that it really does measure, and then I go back to my heart. as I rise it up, out from me, it spikes right where the actual cord connects to my spirit. Our spirit radiates about that far outside of our body. So the most interference it picks up is actually at the edge of my spirit. It's not within. So the measurements that I'm getting spike as I pull away a little bit from me, not within. So I go through and I show all of this, and then I start to go and I start to map it a little bit. I show that there's a lower reading down there, and that's right where the edge is. And I go back, and there's a definable edge, but now it gets spiked out. This machine is not the greatest, but it's given me the ability to get better ones soon. Now, if I do this to somebody else, their heart does not spike out the machine. So I can take an EMF detector and go over your heart, and chances are it'll probably have half the meters at the bottom, because you're a Christian. Those that are spiritually dead barely even register the meter. What an odd thing for me to discover. What an odd thing for me to discover. But I have to be very careful how I talk about that, because if you say, oh, you're spiritually dead to the wrong person, you suddenly have a fight in your hand. Now look at this. Just moments later, same settings. No reading at all. The reason being, she got so suddenly depressed for some reason. I have no idea what it was. Something happened in her life that it just shut her down completely. So what I'm actually showing with those lights is the sporadic intensity that is hitting this muscle. Now, I show you one thing, and this is for clinical purposes only. I'm not a very bashful person. If you would, sir, please just get a good grasp on that. Find out how much muscle is there, okay? Compare it to the left arm. This is probably my dominant arm, okay? Most people who are right-handed, all of the muscles on their right side are typically stronger than the ones on their left. It's the dominant side. It's used more often, okay? You just stand up, just you take a palm in your hand. Now, do this and pull up, and you can feel that, how much muscle is in there, okay? Compare that to that. Quite a bit more on this part. But there's two pectorals that are also underneath, okay? These two over here are still smaller than the two that are over here. This increase in the muscle mass is actually asymmetrical on two different horizons, not just the obvious big ones. The connection from heart to heart does not go below, it just goes to the top. She experiences the same symptoms that I experience. When we talked at the church about this, without any explanation, it was automatically assumed that the devil had done it. Completely disregarding the fact of how it started when I prayed, completely disregarding the fact that I was in a deep fast, completely disregarding the fact that I had spent my life serving God, completely disregarding the fact that I had an accurate track record of predicting the future, completely disregarding the fact that I already had prophets under my wing who were learning how to do these sorts of things with the weather. I mean, like, not even looking at my person, looking at the fear and superstition. Now, I had to go through all of that to explain that the beautiful thing that God had done. It's a heart story from the heartland. We are a emblem of the heart of America, much like what Hosea and Gomer were very long ago. The one thing about true prophets in America, sir, and don't let any of them bamboozle you, because there are many false prophets out in this world, and if you ever find one, send them my way. I'd love to tear them up a little bit, mentally. set them back right. They're not permanently damned if they're still alive. All the prophets of this age, of any age, have to have some sort of reflection or echo of a prophet that's in that book. We don't have the ability to stray outside of the Word. We don't have that ability.
Right.
And nothing God's going to put onto us is ever going to be new. There's nothing new under the sun. That's something that nobody really thought about, when they started judging as to who was false and who wasn't, who was true and who wasn't. It might sound amazing. Gomer wasn't a nice woman. This woman has not been nice. She got a restraining order on me because the church convinced her I was the devil. So I spent the last 3 years participating unwillingly in all of her sex and all of her drugs and all of her lifestyle and all of her everything. And it hasn't been until recently that we have started to get along despite the no contact order. This is where I legally have to turn this off.